Oh, it looks like live. I'm just going to play the intro now. So, there we go. Last introduction. Welcome, Cynthia.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be talking with you today.
I'm so excited to have you on. Welcome to Thought Improvisation. It's a really honor to actually have you on. So a quick, actually, you know what? Let me check to see that everything works. Yeah, it works. Everything works. Perfect. So I just checked the actual live stream. So we're live now. It has a small delay. So it's just plain introduction. So Cynthia, thanks again for coming on the show. I'm super excited to talk to you. You're like an OG, original gangster in this field that you're doing. I've been in the field for about 4 months now. I mean, in the field means, I've been reading about these things, and you've been doing this since about 1999. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So let me quickly do a quick introduction of you. So you are Dr. Cynthia Sue Larson. You have written a number of books, including Quantum Jumps, Reality Shifts, High Energy Money. You have a degree in physics from UC Berkeley. You have an MBA degree, a Doctor of Divinity. Let's get to that one later. You have also second degree black belt in Korean martial arts, Kuk Soul Won. And you have your own show, Living the Quantum Dream, on the Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. You have a website, realityshifters.com. It's all in the show notes in the YouTube, so just check down below in the comment section. So since 1999, magic number, you've been doing scientific research in the fields of quantum physics, quantum biology, the placebo effect, positive psychology, sociology, and alternative medicine. And you've written a number of articles that have been featured in reading a lot of different publications. So I'm new to the field, and I'm fascinated by this. I've been into this sort of field of sort of research or study for about 4 months now. And after a very profound ayahuasca experience, it sort of opened up my eyes a little bit. And I figured that, well, actually, maybe I'll ask you, Cynthia. So what is this? What are you studying? What is this thing, actually? Well, how would you define your field?
That's a great question. It's getting easier now that more people are experiencing what's known as Mandela effects.
Okay.
But previous to that, the easiest way to describe it was that I delve into consciousness and the sorts of things people experience when they might notice things appear, disappear, transform, or transport, or they have synchronicities or bizarre experiences with time. So it's kind of, I looked for a term. This is back when the ARPANET was first out. We didn't really have the internet. So actually, I've been, before the realityshifters.com website in 99, there was some time, about a year before that in 1998, and even a little before that, I'd been trying to see if there's anybody talking about this, researching it, and I couldn't really find much, but I had to come up with what I'm looking for. So I looked for the term reality shifts as being descriptive of what I was experiencing. And I thought, I can't be the only one. So, and now, thank goodness I'm not. More and more people are experiencing this.
Right. So you mentioned things like consciousness, awareness, the nature of reality itself. How our experience as a human beings, as a consciousness. So, these are so deep questions. I mean, this is like the holy grail of what sort of everyone wants to know. It's like, why are we here? What are we? Where are we from? What is reality? What is the nature? So because we're perceiving through our brains and our 5 senses, and vibrations. But what is this thing? Like, what is the thing that we're doing here? And I know this is a sort of a general question, but after so many years, like, have you sort of gotten closer to, like, what is this thing? this thing that we're here? What's going on here?
Well,
who sent us here?
I think we're born close to it. It's like, but we can keep, we're interesting as human beings because to some degree, children have an innate sense of what's going on. And I definitely, when I was quite young, still remembered a sense of where I was before I was born. Okay. So that helps. All these things help to go with what you actually know. And when we lose sight of that, when we lose touch with what we know for sure, what we're feeling, how we sense, and much of our culture can pull us away from that if we let it, some of the perceived stresses and so forth. So for me, it's a lot getting back to the beginner's mind, to that childlike wonder, and also that deep inner wisdom that we're actually born with, I believe. But then at the same time, taking advantage of high education and going to universities, studying physics, studying divinity, studying martial arts even. All of these, they might seem like they're very diverse fields, but for me, they're not. They all are about reality. Exactly.
It's like, I remember a quote that was as like as above, so below. Like if you see things, like generally you see things, you see the same thing in everything almost. It's like there's this red thread going through everything. And I mean, reading from what you've done, so you've done quantum physics. So yeah, I mean, I have so many questions now, but you've done quantum physics, quantum biology, the placebo effect, positive psychology. I mean, things like religion, not culture, but religion. I mean, it seems to me that there is one sort of truth. There is one sort of, let's call it reality, or there might be more. But let's say there's one truth. But then you have all these different models, different religions, different, psychology, positive psychology. Are they explaining the same thing? Are they all trying to get to this ultimate truth? Like who we are, where we're from, and what is our purpose?
I'd say so. To me, it looks that way. But I know there are people that disagree and would say that some particular religion is the correct one. But I share more of what you're describing as my view, definitely, because it looks like blind men describing the elephant, and one of them notices that you've got this very thick tree-like substance here, and that's the leg of the elephant and so forth. And we see the same thing even within science. Some people think that scientists must all agree on what's going on, but they don't. So there's a scientific method where we have hypotheses, but when you get to the nature of reality, when you get to things that are essentially unmeasurable, that's where some of our scientific method can't go there. Right. We can, with our imagination, go there. Scientists can come up with interpretations, but it's a little bit more, it's outside of our ability to pin it down with something we can hold in our hands, weigh it, measure it, describe it fully so everyone completely agrees. And that's the nature of the essence of reality. It's a little bit indescribable, a little bit ineffable. Yeah. But that makes it wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, to think that we know this, I mean, we clearly don't know anything. I mean, we know a little bit, but it's so minuscule compared to whatever this thing is. So to even have, when you know that you don't know anything, then you shouldn't be so, sure in your conclusion. I mean, you have to be more, you have to approach everything with humility, because if you don't, it shows that you have a lack of sort of, understanding of how deep and profound and just, if you're so sure about something, it seems like you know a lot of things, but you can't know a lot of things. You can't know because there must be so much more. I mean, we can't even explain the brain, the processes in in the cells in the body. I mean, we know almost nothing. So, I think we should be a little bit humble, and especially things. Well, okay. So I'm asking this. So you studied physics. So how did you end up in? Because that seems like a legitimate, thing to study. And so how did you end up in the field? I guess we can call it metaphysics. What drew you in there to begin with?
Well, actually, lifelong fascination with the nature of reality got me to physics, and then got me into the beyond the shut up and calculate part of physics, which that's been bandied around as a term. And then a lot of people want to go deeper. I think it's not just spiritual seekers such as ourselves, but it's also many physicists would like to know what's really going on, how much more than just the numbers and crunching through the numbers. So when I was studying physics at UC Berkeley, I loved quantum physics. I loved the ephemeral quality of it, the way that it was possible for me to just feel like, oh, I see the answer here. It made a kind of intuitive sense, which was kind of crazy because it's so different than our very Newtonian classical physics, where we've got typically, inclined planes on frictionless surfaces and so forth, and working with kinetic and potential energy and all that good stuff. But quantum physics gets a little bit strange, but to me it's wonderful, and I'm fascinated by that. And I was glad to see there are others who came before me, such as the so-called hippies who saved physics, and those guys they were right here in Berkeley. I felt like something about Berkeley called me to UC Berkeley, and the fundamental physics group had been full of explorers already, who I've been blessed to be able to get to know and work with. So that's been a very exciting part of my journey.
Wow. Okay. So let me ask you then this, because I mentioned previously that I had an ayahuasca experience, which was very profound, obviously. It's like, I had two trips, and I've never really done anything, at all, any drugs whatsoever. And I did ayahuasca, which sort of went straight for the, $1 million prize there. And I got so much information I downloaded. I was just fed information about that were infinite beings. I literally had instant manifestations based on my own thoughts and feelings. I was told things, secrets, secrets meaning we're, infinite beings, beings of light. I saw this theme of duality, this up, down, dark, night, yin, yang, man, woman, and everything very, visualized. I saw crazy visualizations, pyramids, art from South America, intertwining with the music. I had like experiences where the music was sort of, what the musicians were singing, it corresponded to my trip, but there was like 20 other people tripping. So it's impossible that their music would correspond to my trip, because every trip is individual. So it's almost like I created my own reality, within and that was just like a fraction of what I experienced. But love was the deep message for me, that everything is love, and you should just let go of fear and everything, because love is all we have. That's all that matters, in the end. Yes. All that matters here on Earth. So that was my personal experience there. That kind of opened up some doorways for me. How do you think psychedelics? Have you had any personal experience with it? And do you think how is that impacting research or people's perception about this? And how can it be used to sort of do more studies on this?
Well, something like ayahuasca could be useful for people like yourself who, I take it you didn't have experiences like that prior to your experience. Okay. So it opens doorways that otherwise might not be opened. And then some people benefit greatly from having this experience. It looks like it was very positive for you. When you describe it, like there's nothing to be afraid of, it's all love. I totally agree. Yeah. And then we get back to that perennial wisdom of all these spiritual paths coming together. And that's how I do see it. So to me, that's my takeaway when I look at the spiritual paths on Earth and mesh it with what you're experiencing. So I would say anybody who can access that through ayahuasca or something similar, which I've not really experienced a large range of, I haven't taken things like LSD, or people are now microdosing in those, and they say they're good experiences. Maybe so. I'm not really qualified to speak on that area because I don't have much experience there.
Right.
But I can tell you that what you're describing, I also experience it directly myself without the drugs. So, but I think that's actually really good, because otherwise, if it was just people taking ayahuasca, we would then have this amazing experience. People who don't do it would say, yeah, but that's the drug, that's not real. But it's kind of cool because I'm already experiencing what you're talking about. And I'd say that is real. You are touching the truth with a capital T. It's all about humility, about recognizing that we are infinite, eternal beings, that there is this love that permeates everything. Yeah. That's real. That's real. Instant manifestation. I've experienced it. So a lot of the things that happen to me, I think it's because I'm in this, what you might call a trippy state of mind, but I think the drugs can be quite good, because if you didn't take it, you wouldn't know what I'm talking about at all. I mean,
I wouldn't
you might
accept it probably. I would probably reject it.
Yeah. Right.
It
So
sort of
then
opens
I
up a
would,
pathway to greater. Yes. It takes down your sort of barrier of, just blatantly saying, no, this is not real, can't be, where show me the evidence, show me everything, I'm not open.
Yes. And there are long traditions on Earth of visionaries. There are indigenous peoples that have shamans, for example, who are the wisdom keepers, who are the seers, the visionaries, and they would historically do something like ayahuasca. So I don't know what your ceremony was like, but traditionally there would be someone leading the ceremony who would make sure that people are wisely guided, that they can experience for themselves something meaningful, good, deep, and true. So it sounds like that was true for you. And that's a very important thing, I would say, in general, to have, rather than just, I'm going to take this pill and I'll be accessing that. And I think there's something to be said for having a guide, having an opportunity to have someone there to walk you through it, to who's been there, which it sounds like you did.
Yeah,
that would be good.
Exactly. So just a disclaimer or comment on that thing. Like, I wouldn't recommend anyone to do it. I mean, this is a very personal thing. It's a very personal decision. Tim Ferriss described it as brain surgery once. I mean, it's literally, and this is heavy stuff. So if you're not prepared for this thing, it's not recreational, I think, at all. I did it because I wanted to. I was reading a lot of books. I tried to go very deep into myself and to understand things, and I felt like I reached a level and I couldn't go deeper. So I felt the calling to do these things, to find answers. So that was it for me. But after the first trip, I regretted it, because it was like a red pill. It was Matrix times 100. It's like, if you wake up and then you hear, or that you remember that all your parents died in a plane crash or something, and that feeling when, oh my God, is real. It's not a nightmare. It's actually real. That horrible feeling. I had that after the first trip, actually. But this is a longer story, but it's basically, I didn't surrender. I was fighting it. And that's the last thing you should do. You should surrender, and you should go with it. And then once I did that, then I saw the flip side, which was love and understanding and all these things. So, it was like I went to hell and I went to heaven and everywhere in between. it was crazy. But anyway, so this is not an endorsement of any type of drugs at all. This is personal. And where I went, it was really well taken care of. There were shamans with music, and they were extremely professional. So this is not recreational. I would never recommend anyone to do this. And it's very personal.
I like what you said about fighting the experience. This also translates to when I went through a Kundalini awakening. I was fighting that experience very big time. I felt like my mind was falling apart. It was opening up, and it was like, oh my gosh! And I was trying to grab onto everything. Like, no, I have to hold it together. And it made it so much harder. So I would agree with you in a different experiential situation that it's good to surrender, to just let go of the ego. That is what's happening. There's an ego death occurring, and you are transcending it and growing. It's a growth opportunity. So if anyone's listening and they're going through that, hang in there.
Right.
It'll be okay.
So then let me ask you, so what do you think is the best way to sort of, because what we're talking about, we're not really going super deep into the topics, because it's such a big topic. It's hard to really almost go deep into one thing. But what do you have any recommendations? What can people do to sort of experience this thing? I mean, as meditation, you mentioned Kundalini yoga, to really to get below the surface, because I mean, we're all human beings. We have these five senses, but somehow most people, it's almost like the movie Matrix. That was like the most real analogy to me. It's like we're here, but we don't, like, there's something there, but we can't touch it or taste it or feel it, so how can people, sort of get under the surface and get a feel for this alternative world, or to become more vibrational or more spiritual, or to see something so that I can understand that this is actually real? Yes,
I recommend meditation if people are open to that. Also, another good entry way in is through spiritual practice. So if you have a prayer practice, that's very good too. It can be quite good. Sometimes combining the meditation and the spiritual, I think that's my personal favorite. So that's where I go to. It's my own daily practice. And I think regularity and making it something that you do is really important. So that some people, Western society would like to just do one thing and suddenly be awakened. But like you say, it can be a shock. And then right afterward you say, wait a minute, I don't want that. So the big shocks would be things like lucid dreaming. So that's a gateway people can walk through, and it can be extremely shocking because you can have a similar experience in a dream where lucid dream is where you practice the art of tonight I'm going to wake up inside my dream. Just keep saying that, do some other things to bring that experience on. When it happens, it can be mind-blowing. And then you realize, whoa, and it can snap you awake into your waking life as well. But that's a big one. Near-death experiences definitely can take people there, but I don't recommend that because you don't want to be messing with that.
It's risky.
No, very risky. And then, so that's why I would recommend the meditation, the boring things, like a regular practice of meditation and having your spiritual practice. And some people have extraordinary human experiences, exceptional ones. And these are epiphanies. They might happen in nature. They might happen if you think you see a UFO. Lots of things can trigger an exceptional human experience. And those can open a door that never quite shuts again. So these are some big things where you realize something else is going on and it's way bigger than I ever realized.
Right.
Yeah.
So meditation is another topic because it seems it's very, it's the latest thing you need to do. Everyone's saying you should meditate, and I tried it for a very long time. I did guided meditations. So there are so many different meditations. Do you have an advice on what type of meditation people can do? Should they just sit and listen to the sound and their condition? Should they listen to a guided meditation? And how to get into it? Because there are different ways and with different results, I think.
Yeah, definitely. There are so many different ways. I like to ask people to first get to know themselves. What are some favorite activities that you like to do? Some people can't stay put. They say, I can't meditate because I have to keep moving. That's not a problem because you can do a walking meditation. So there are ways to take a favorite activity, get to know who you are, and then combine it with a focus of attention. When you do those two things, you've got a meditation. So it could be like washing the dishes and looking out the window. It could be going on a walk. Could be just sitting and watching thoughts go through the imaginary sky of your mind, like clouds, and you just notice them and get good at just clearing your sky. Like, okay, I see all these thoughts. I'm just gonna have a no thought experience here, which is a pretty amazing type of meditation. It's harder than it sounds. It sounds like, oh, that's easy, but it's simple, not easy. and some people like to focus on their breath, bringing their breathing down low in their abdomen the way it's supposed to be. Usually we do shallow upper chest breathing. None of us should be doing that. We should all be breathing below our navel the way we do when we're small children, which I believe is why they have so much energy. Okay. And then we lose that. And then if you're a martial artist, you have to relearn it. Right. If you're a yogi master, you have to relearn it. So that's what they're doing. All the shamans teach that, and the Qigong masters teach that, yogi masters and so forth. So it's very important to breathe correctly. But anyway, going back to which meditation, there's so many different good ones. It really depends more on the person. Right. I don't think there's one best one for everybody. No. Also, there are different times a day you might prefer different meditations. So keep trying to, yeah.
This is true for me as well, actually. I do usually do in the morning. I do listen to their condition for about 15, 20 minutes. And that really, it's funny because I've done meditation for maybe a year now. And I've recently started this, just listen to their condition. And it really has different results to me, because for me it didn't work to really focus on the breath, but air conditioning, it's like, it's just there. It doesn't really change. It's very monotone. It's easy to go back to. It's like a focal point. And
excellent.
And in the evening, my mind has the whole day momentum of different things. It's easier to do guided meditation personally.
Right.
But so why is meditation important? What is happening? Okay, so you're not thinking thoughts. So what? Like, why is that, so important and so impactful? Do you know?
Yes. The same reason that you clear your palate before you taste the next food. It's, the thing about consciousness is that the key to it, that what we're really talking about when we talk about consciousness is the idea that we can be, paying attention to the very process of paying attention. So it's a stair-stepped kind of an idea. You're observing your own thoughts, and it's a process of learning to get to that place where you are able to be the observer of your thoughts and feelings without necessarily attaching to them and making the mistake that you are that identity of those thoughts and feelings. So it's required for all conscious spiritual growth to be able to make that separation and recognize that you're a being of many levels of perceptivity, and that when you can be aware of awareness, then that is the birth of consciousness. And that's the key to all of it. It gets into the quantum physics too. So it's extremely important.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's basically you recognize that you are not your thoughts. You separate yourself from your thoughts, and you're able to perceive yourself as a thinking being.
That's right.
So
it's the beginning
of separation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's a recognition that, I can choose how I respond to the situation. And so when people do these kinds of meditations, scientists study their brains and take a look to see what's happening, and they'll notice that the hippocampus, the area of the brain that looks at patterns, is growing and developing. And they'll notice that we're just expanding our ability to think clearly. So meditation is a really good thing to do, even if you're not on a spiritual path and you don't care. Although I think people watching your show do care. So, but it's got lots of perks in addition to consciousness itself.
Right. So that's a key word, consciousness. So this is again a very difficult question, but what is consciousness? What is that thing? Is it local? Are you receiving it? When we die, is that it? Can you produce consciousness, or do we receive it? What do you think is consciousness? What is your sort of...
Yeah. Well, I tend to agree with Max Planck, the physicist who coined the term quanta, because he said that you can't get behind consciousness, that consciousness is fundamental. It's there. And I would say that's true. But then the word consciousness is kind of a loaded area, because we don't currently have a lot of agreement on what we mean. Right. Some people say it means paying attention. And if that was true, then a lot of the artificial intelligence and the robots we have are capable of looking and paying attention. And then some people say, well, it's that plus it's also intention, like a willfulness, that sense that you want to do something. And maybe so. And then, of course, I was basically quoting Leibniz when I was talking about this ability to look at yourself. I think he was the first philosopher in the West that brought that idea forth. And that's really true. He's also the scientist who helped develop calculus, the notation that we still use. Also, he helped put the pillars of the scientific method together. And then people thought, he's a little bit crazy because he had some other ideas. But I like Leibniz. I think he was onto a lot of good ideas. And especially with relation to the way these layers of observation work, because we humans have many layers ourselves. We're not just one being. We are, but we've got levels of awareness. We've got what we feel with our heart, how we love. We have what we think that we want. And then we have our gut feelings that propel us to do things that look crazy to our head, but we need to do them. And then we think, why did I do that? So we have a lot to work with. Yeah. We got a lot to work with. Just that very limited range that we have, which is not that much. We have a job to do to bring it together. Right. And meditation can help with that too.
Right. Yeah, it's because it seems that we have thoughts, we have emotions, and thoughts influence emotions, and there's a cycle. You have momentum in it, it builds. And then, because I think personally, when you do meditation or you do these types of things, it's sort of, yeah, you separate yourself. You can sort of observe yourself, but then you can also observe others, and you can sort of see in others that they have a bad momentum. You can sort of you become a better observer of things.
Especially if there's compassion in the observation. It really matters how. It's the gentleness. Remember, if you're just observing from a cold clinical viewpoint, it's not the same as coming from kindness, compassion, empathy, and love. Yeah. Sorry.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. And I think, so how do you, because I read a Joe Dispenza, I think his name is, Supernatural, I think the book was. He talked about automatic programming, that we're running sort of software in our brains, and most of the things that we do and say and even feel are just reproductions of past behavior. But with meditation, you can step away from that. You can sort of reprogram. You can sort of take control of your destiny. Is that something you subscribe to? Or like because it seems a lot of people, you can almost they look a little bit like software programs, including myself, of course. But these techniques help you to become aware of the conditioning that you have, I think. And then you can sort of work on chipping away on that. And then you can sort of take hold of your destiny more. What are you thinking about this?
Yeah, I think it's very important to do that. And again, I believe in a full body approach, which gets into the martial arts side of it, because in martial arts, what we do is you learn to, it feels like you're slowing down time, but you're not. You're just doing this kind of awareness that you're talking about. So it looks like things can slow down when you need them to. So it's easy to respond appropriately, very gently, with hardly much effort, because there's been this long time training process of the entirety of a person. That would be ideal. Of course, not all martial artists are like that, but it's a possibility. And if you set forth into the martial arts with that in mind, you can definitely progress in that direction. So I don't know if I changed your question a little bit, but the observation matters so much. That meditation that we do and martial artists meditate too, just to recognize that you can see a lot more than the tunnel vision that we tend to get into when we get into these pre-programmed little segments that Joe Dispenza is writing about. Mm-hmm. And I write about it too in my book, Reality Shifts, that people are like on autopilot. It's almost like they program themselves and they're not changing what they're doing. Meditation breaks through that, gives you the ability to see these little patterns, and then you feel like you're above that. You literally are above that. You can start doing some really cool stuff, different than you've ever done.
Such as? Do you have any? Yeah. So with this knowledge, what can we do with this? Okay, now we know we are not our thoughts, we're not our emotions. We can step away from it. We can observe ourselves. We can observe others. Now what? What can we do with this? How can we play with this? How can we become better? Take it to the next level.
Yeah, go into that book when I was just mentioning my book, Reality Shifts. In that book, I talk about living a waking dream. So it's like lucid living. It's just like being in a lucid dream, but you do it in daily life. You know, it does require that you've aligned your head, your heart, your gut. If you haven't done that, it's, what happens next is not pretty. And we described it already briefly. When you're fighting with yourself, it's not beautiful. You described it as hell. I think that's an apt description. So, and people might not realize that. Often I get lots of emails from people asking, I just want to go back in time. I have to fix this mistake. Is that possible? And because they've read that I write that the past can change. It often does. And I say, yes, it's possible, but you're not going to like what I say next. You're going to need to do some spiritual work to make sure that what you think that you want matches what you actually love. And most of all, what you genuinely need, because you're going to get what you genuinely need, whether or not you want it. And so, and I think a lot of Westerners, we're stuck in our heads. We've forgotten to bring it together. Right. I'm so glad you're living in Paris right now, because I think no, that's great, because I think that in Europe I think there's an openness to being more of a full person. Not to say anything against anybody else, but I've lived in Europe also, and I loved it also. So that was the best thing. I lived in Switzerland, Lausanne, had a great time, and the French-speaking part of Switzerland. Right. So it's easy to get on a train, go to France, and visit other parts of Europe. But anyway, So
you found it to be more open in Europe then than is it the U.S. you're referring to, or I mean, because you're living in California now?
Yeah, I'm in California, so it's a bubble, as we say. It's not typical of the Midwest in general.
Right.
It's avant-garde, but at the same time, there's also a lot of pressure to conform, like you get anywhere in the world. For me personally, they don't already talk, and that's a fun experience. I think travel is very good for people. So
Right.
I only lived in Switzerland for 9 months. It's long enough to get a feeling for it, but it's still not quite the same as living somewhere for years.
Right.
And that was in the 1990s. Things change.
Yeah.
But comparing the,
Sure do.
yeah. So it's different.
Right. So, okay. So because you also offer services to people, do you counsel people? Do you offer?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So then I think this is important or interesting for people watching or listening. So, because everyone, we're all human beings. We all have these needs and these wishes in life. We want all these different things. How do you have any advice? Like, how can people, like you said, match your heart with your mind, align them, and focus on the right things and go get them and enjoy the having of them? Do you have any, I know I'm maybe asking for a silver bullet here, and I think maybe that doesn't exist, but do you have any advice after doing so much counseling? I like the minimum input, maximum output. Do you have any silver bullets that people can help people?
Having those questions in mind is how you get the answers. So when you genuinely want to know the answer, like how can I line myself up? Show me how to do it. Then you'll get that answer. And when you really love that feeling, like, yeah, I'd love to live a life like that. And when you actually genuinely need it, then you've got it. So that's your silver bullet. Easy, right? Simple.
Just get
but maybe not. Just make it happen.
Yeah.
But it takes lining it all up. And so for that, again, I would recommend a spiritual approach rather than magical tricks like, well, you do this incantation. Sure. There are lots of people who want that magic bullet, that one thing, but I don't, because what's happening is truly growth. It's a growth process. Yeah. Then what you're growing into may not be what you think that you're growing into. So it's cooperative, collaborative with levels of yourself, including your future self, who you are just getting to know. But that would be the other fast track method. Get to know your best possible future self and just say, look, I need your help. Pull me forward. I'm asking for your help. I need it. Bring it now. I need my best possible future self. Right. And that would be the other. So, but both of these require dedication, a daily practice of meditation. So, although it's possible, if you can lucid dream, you can snap into it a little bit faster.
So lucid dreaming, that's basically a state where you're dreaming, but you know that you're dreaming, so you can basically do what you want. Or what is lucid dreaming?
Okay, so lucid dreaming would be, I mentioned earlier, you can intend that you're going to have a lucid dream, and you can, every night when you go to sleep, just tell yourself that. Make sure that you're giving yourself enough hours to sleep so this can actually happen. And at some point, it will happen, as long as you're dreaming. People, if they're taking sleeping pills, then you need to probably go off the medication, because some people don't have dreams. So you need to be able to dream, sleep long enough, go off medication if you have to, with your doctor's consent and awareness. But then it's possible, once you're dreaming, to recognize, wow, this is a dream. You can look at something like your hand and notice it looks a little different. You can look at yourself. You can have things you do to take a checkpoint in the dream. And as soon as you notice this is a dream, then you can have some fun with it.
Then you don't wake up.
You can ask.
Because that usually happens to me. I wake up when I realize
because you're so excited.
Now we're gonna have fun. And then I wake up because I get conscious of I'm lying in a bed or something. Yes. Maybe that's practice, or?
That takes practice. Yeah. So part of telling yourself, I'm going to do this. This is what I do. Then it starts feeling like this is what I do. It's okay. Yeah, the first few times I did the same thing. I just wake up with excitement and like, I was awake in a dream. Wow. But then you'll be like, that's what I do. And then it starts getting really fun when you bring that excitement into daily waking life. That's where it gets really fun. You get instant synchronicities, instant manifestation. You feel like you're just gliding through, like life is living you.
Right.
So it's this amazing give and take between your willpower and what you're feeling like you're the universe and changing, going, flowing with it. So it's fun.
Okay, right. So now we're starting to touch on something interesting. You mentioned synchronicity, because I know
Yes.
that I think it was Carl Jung that first coined this term,
Yes.
or the concept, where he talks about it. I'm reading from Wikipedia now. Jung's belief was that just as events may be connected by causality, they may also be connected by meaning. Events connected by meaning need not have an explanation in terms of causality, which does not generally contradict the axiom of causality. So what is synchronicity, and how does this thing play in here?
Synchronicity is where you think of someone and they phone, or you think of someone and they don't live in your town, but then you turn the corner walking downtown and there they are.
Right.
Things like that. Or you're talking to someone and both of you lived in the same small village in Eastern Europe, or something like that. It's like, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it gives you a feeling that there is a deeper hidden order to everything. Eternal, infinite beings with love at the root of everything, very connected, which reminds us of what we were talking about earlier. So you start feeling like, wow, I'm glimpsing the nature of reality. This is the way it really works. This is something bigger. And the reason, Wolfgang Pauli was a physicist who would talk to Carl Jung about this idea of synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
And Wolfgang Pauli was himself rather remarkable because other physicists didn't want him to come to visit their laboratories. He was well known for having a Pauli effect. As soon as he entered the room, there would be malfunction of the equipment that they had been hoping to demonstrate. But like, oh gosh, Pauli's here, now nothing works.
Okay.
But the funny thing is, these are scientists, and they were noticing
Right.
that there's something that they can't measure, but it's observable, and it's real. Pauli is having an effect. He's becoming unpopular at experimental demonstrations because everybody knows if he shows up, nothing's going to work. Like, oh, why'd you bother inviting him?
And I think this is the part where, like, if people have been following the conversation so far and agreed, sort of, been open, this is the part where a lot of people just fall off, because now we're talking about emotions, consciousness, feelings, all these things. Okay, you feel great, you feel happy, that's fine. But now we're talking about actually attracting or changing the nature of reality. We're talking about changing reality, physics,
Yes.
right? We're not just talking about you feel great. We're talking about things you see in life actually changing based on your thoughts and your emotions. And that's where it gets weird.
Yeah. Only because it runs counter to what we've been taught. Now, it would not seem weird if we all started life with ayahuasca experiences, taught from people who'd had them. Then we'd have a different worldview than we do. So it's only weird compared to what we think we know.
Yeah, it's weird compared to our conditioning or our.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how to define this, but yeah. So what would you say? What is the most compelling evidence that shows, unequivocally, this is real? This is not some mumbo jumbo, wishy new age thing. This is real. You actually do impact the reality. And thoughts and emotions and vibrations, actually, it's real.
The closest thing I've seen to anything anywhere near what people might accept as proof would be things like the placebo effect, because it's demonstrable. You can repeat the experiment. You can keep showing that you're giving somebody something that should have no effect. But even now, there are people trying to prove there must be something making that happen. So we've got studies, the placebo studies happening at Harvard University. And the last time I looked, they're trying to correlate something with functions of the brain and the way that we're then, so they're still trying to get material causal factor and force in play. But I think that's a mistake. It doesn't look like that to me or to you who've had this thing.
Right. It's still, our connection is breaking up a little bit. Yeah, I think also, the placebo effect. Okay, now it's resuming again. So, the mind over matter, placebo, I understand, because your brain is connected to your body, so the brain can sort of signal and it can make things happen. But we're talking about things, your emotions and thoughts, changing reality out there, but where there is no perceived connection, let's say.
Right.
But then I guess you have to go into things like quantum physics and talk about connections on a deeper level, going to things like vibrations. And can you explain that? How does that? What is your theory of how that works? What are vibrations and how are things connected when they don't seem to be connected?
Yeah, to get into that, to take a look at what we know from physics, then we definitely get into what people have previously called the quantum realm. Right. To me, there's no under the rug realm that's purely quantum, and then the rest of us can go about our regular lives. No. Right. There are scientists who also have said some heretical things, such as there's no return to classical reality. That's throwing down the white glove, like it's all quantum. Okay. And they may not go where we're going with it. I know that, but I like their spirit. I like the idea that quantum actually is the larger set in set theory. So that's the big set. And then there's just a smaller, more restrictive special case of classical physics. You can actually make that work mathematically. I'm not going to get into that, but to me it helps prove the point that if you want to look at what's truly ubiquitous, that's quantum. The classical physics world is a very limited special case. We've pretty much fooled ourselves that that's what's happening, that time moves in a certain direction only, that we're all individuals, that we're separated, that there's no way that an observer could possibly influence an experiment. Right. But we know all those things to be very different thanks to quantum physics. So I believe that quantum physics can show us that we are entangled, that consciousness does matter through observation, through how we observe, and it totally changes everything. But mostly for me, it's direct experience. I've just had too many way far out things happen to ever go back to saying that can't be happening. So I know that happens. Right.
Yeah. I mean, even the Ayahuasca thing for me was pretty. Even just dreaming itself, I think. But then, then you can say, well, it was just a hallucination and things like this. It's easily written off, let's say. But I think people that have had these experiences, they sort of know. I mean, they don't really want to talk about it because they're afraid to be, shunned or judged and how is that for you? Because you're sort of out there on the leading edge on that, in that sort of field where, it's sort of risky, I think. Joe Dispenza talked about this in his book too, because he said for so many years he'd just been too scared to talk about these things.
Yes.
And even there's a thing called Mind Valley. I don't know if you heard about Mind Valley.
I've heard about it, yeah.
So it's kind of like TED. Everyone knows TED, there's this sort of YouTube thing where people talk about technology design and education. And Mind Valley is sort of the same thing for spirituality or self-development, I think you say. And the founder, I think his name is Vishen Lakshmi, an Indian guy, super cool guy, really nice guy, very smart, very amazing guy. He talks about, in one of his talks, this is like the first time I've seen this, and this is the founder of Mind Valley, which is a pretty big deal. He talks about that, our brains are consciousness experiences. So you have like the animals that have normal consciousness, and then we have the humans with the neocortex. We can think, we can create things like religion, organizations, constructs, culture. And then you have I think he calls it the life hacker, which says, okay, I don't have to cater to one religion. I can take different religions and put them together. I can hack life. I don't have to work 9 to 5. I can set up my own company. He's hacking life. And then the next level is where it gets squirrely. And that's the level that we're talking about. And he's saying things like, well, you become lucky. You know, you
Yeah.
become more
Yeah.
intuitive. You start
Yes.
receiving, you know.
Yes.
And then he talks about the God mind, which is the level above where you see everything's connected, where you can have things like through
Yes.
meditation. So, and this is, so I think people are sort of starting to talk about these things. Even Steve Jobs, he kind of made it okay to do LSD, these things, because when you're Steve Jobs, you can do whatever you want, And even, I think Elon Musk at some point, a lot of these guys are going to this, Burning Man festivals and.
Yeah.
But it's still really frowned upon, and how has that been for you personally? I mean,
Well, I have a strong commitment to what I'm doing, which otherwise there's no way I would have been doing this for 20 years now. And you're right. Starting out when nobody was really talking about this. But then lots of things came along, law of attraction, what the belief noticing history is changing. Some of them are panicking. They're not going to where we're going with it. They're looking to see what kind of evil plot is afoot.
right.
And I don't need to go there, but I can understand it because with my Kundalini awakening, I had a dark night of the soul, just trying to hang on to what I thought was real. You went through it, ayahuasca, so with faith of thinking, okay, these scientists have done something at the Large Hadron Collider. They're changing reality. They shouldn't have fired that thing up. But I tell them, no, this stuff's been going on just what it can be right now. So, but for me to get through this, it's a mission, a sense of purpose that I know I'm here for a reason. This is a time of great awakening on the planet. I hear so many people tell me how much it means that I've been, to them personally, that I've been so calm about a subject that can be nerve-wracking and have been a good source of guidance. So that feels good. And I love hanging out with people who've had exceptional human experiences, who've seen UFOs, who've had near-death experiences, who are lucid dreamers, who are martial artists. These are my people because, they're fully in that. And of course, shamans, they see the world this way too.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And I think our numbers are growing. I think more people are waking up, even if it doesn't seem like it, but it's happening.
Right. So how was the Kundalini experience then? You mentioned that you had a dark night of the soul. How was that?
Because
or maybe you can say, what is
fighting.
Kundalini yoga?
Yeah.
How does that trigger something? What's the practice? I don't really know what it is, so I'd be fascinated to hear.
Okay. Mine was rather spontaneous after many, many months of feeling like I needed to wake up. You described it like there's got to be something more. I can feel it. You watch the movie The Matrix and you're like, this feels right. There's something going on. I want to know what it is.
Something's going on.
Yes.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I get to the bottom of this.
So back in 1994, I was feeling that way. And around Easter time, I told my cousin, I feel like I've overslept. You know that feeling you need to wake up and you can't? I feel like that about life. Like I need to wake up. And then, that was in April or whatever that year. And that was 1994. And then about 6 months later, that's when I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening out of nowhere. Now that was waking up. It's like, okay, that's the alarm clock ringing. What it felt like was just energy just flooding through my body like electric current. I felt like I was just full of light, like I was a pillar of light, and there was no way to turn it off. And it was just like whoosh, and my mind wasn't working the way it used to. It's like everything seemed really different. And if I thought something, I'd be like outside my body with 360-degree vision. I knew what other people were thinking miles away. It was really freaky. And so my immediate reaction was stop. It's kind of like, no, that's what I mean. It's like when you talk about your ayahuasca, I'm like, yeah, because I've just felt like, no. I got to be normal. I got to go back to pretending,
Right.
No, I don't want that.
That was my first instinct too. I don't want this. I want to go back. Put the genie back in the bottle. I don't want to have this. This is too much responsibility. Everything changed now. So
yeah. But because I realized there's anything thought would happen. So walk in a room and everything in it would die. Lights would go out, the machinery would stop working, just like Wolfgang Pauli.
Okay.
I drive his car, the street lights are going out. It doesn't matter what I was doing. Then I realized, oh, that's me. I'm not grounded. I had to learn to ground.
Okay.
So I was just running so much energy.
Okay.
And
but what set this up? How did this get triggered? Like, what was the practice? How did you get into this? Did it just happen, or did you? Yeah.
6 months earlier, I just wanted with every fiber of my being, I need to wake up. And it took 6 months to do it. I think that I needed that time to process it. Lots of things happened. I did start talking with spirits and realizing like I'm not separate from anything. Mm-hmm. And reality is very different than I thought. Right. So some of it seemed nice, some of it just seemed shocking. So the shocking part was the energy and some of the instant awareness and instant connectivity. It seemed like a huge responsibility, right. But and it forces responsibility. It really does force that. So even if you think like, oh, I just want to have fun, well, that's not part of this. It's there's responsibility. There's a lot of people say, oh, that's not good. I don't want to wake up.
Terrible. Right. So then, okay. So then, because I mean, so now we're sort of again in the some people call it like hippie, how can you prove this sort of state or realm where it's hard to argue with people. But then what is, because recognized scientists, let's call them recognized, just use this word, they are studying the nature of reality. I mean, everyone knows we don't know anything what's going on. Quantum physics is just one example.
Right.
We have different theories of reality. We have things like string theory, and so what do you think is the best model of reality that in your experience? Is there, do you have any ideas of like how reality works and which model of reality is a feasible one compared to like what you've experienced?
Laura has written about, and Raphael Busso has written about these. I like Yasunori's take on it. He's a physicist at UC Berkeley, worked on the Large Hadron Collider, and he's co-authored some amazing papers with some of the biggest names in physics. Mm-hmm. So he talks about the idea that to unify the very large with the very small, right. It is necessary to at least adopt this idea that there could be many possible things happening, this multiverse approach, and then you can parse through a certain space or an area, a region, and recognize that there's interconnectedness happening there. It's very key. What this leads to is a sense that when you see something like if you see a corner around the wall with a chair partially obstructed, you know that the rest of the chair is there. And this is how we know, we imagine things, we know that they're there, and we kind of bring them into being based on our own expectation. So he really is going there with a lot of what he's talking about, but not as far out there as I'm going, I know. But no, not yet. But he's on the cutting edge of some of the leading ways to present the material. So I'm quite pleased with that. And then I belong to a group called Foundations of Mind, which has authored many papers, including those by Henry Stapp, Fred Allen Wolf, who was in What the Bleep Do We Know? These are guys from the hippies who saved physics. George Weissman, very much a part of that group, but one of the founders of it, also presented papers through Foundations of Mind. And so a lot of these people like Jack Sarfati and Elizabeth and so forth, they had a lot to do with this. So foundationsofmind.org is a great place to read papers, cutting edge papers from these scientists who are looking at these questions.
What was it called?
It's called foundationsofmind.org.
Okay.
And the conferences have been happening once or twice a year very steadily since 2014. And I've been involved very much with the coordination of some of these events, such as the one with the hippies who saved physics and the one looking at artificial intelligence. So this is where some of the top questions are happening.
All right. So many topics here. We can go endless in the questions. So we've done an hour now. Actually, do you have time for one or two more questions?
Yes.
So just to take it back from the level of, sort of high flying, bring it back to something more practical for people that might listen. Because I
Yes.
think most people, they have some issues in their life. It's either career, it's relationship, it's money, or it's health. Those are the big ones. Might be a couple of ones that I'm forgetting, but those are the big ones. So do you have any advice? So for example, a relationship. Do you have any advice, general advice? Because we talked now about things, thoughts, emotions, awareness, consciousness. Can we learn something there
Yeah.
and bring it to a level of people so they can really
Yes.
in their everyday life, can they treat their girlfriend, boyfriend better? Can they have a better relationship? Can they approach life in a better way? Do you have any
Yes.
advice there?
Absolutely. We talked earlier about compassion and empathy, and it starts with ourselves, or the relationship we have with ourself in that daily practice of meditation, just to be more compassionate as you observe things about yourself, getting to a place where you can accept yourself without judgment, without trying to force yourself into something that you're not. And it has to start there, so that then when you're in a relationship with another person, you can extend that level of compassion and empathy to them without inadvertently putting some expectation on them that they are going to do the things they've done. Usually where we run into problems in relationships isn't so much the way that person actually is, surprisingly. It has a lot more to do with who we think they are. So anytime you've got two people in a room, you've got at least four. You've got who you think they are, who they think they are, who they think you are, and who, you think that, you see what I mean? It's just all over the place.
Sure.
And that's just, that's boom, four people.
Most people don't think about that. I think they don't realize this.
No, they have no idea. And it's if that's the big idea today to take away, I think that's the key. And it totally dovetails with everything else you mentioned, the job, the money, the health. We have all these things going on, and we don't recognize that our positivity has a huge effect on everything. And so it really does come down to at least keeping an open mind that going back to the relationships, that person could be anything, and look at them like a stranger. Give them the respect to start fresh. Give them a fresh start every day, like you would give yourself a fresh start every day. Make that your new practice. Be compassionate, be empathetic. And you can see miracles occur just with that. These are very simple, powerful things you can do with huge positive results. And there's a lot more, but I know you like to just go for the simple, direct. And that's what it is.
Where do you start? Because it's so much. Because you read, if you want to understand love or self-love or relationship, there's a trillion books. And how do you know where to go? And I guess you have to experience it yourself. That's the only way you learn. You don't learn through words. You have to learn through experience, unfortunately. Like we talked about before as well. The people that just want to quick fix it, just want to take a drug and they want to have an instant enlightenment. But somehow it seems like you have to work for it. Somehow doesn't seem like there's a shortcut.
And when there is a shortcut, there's a huge responsibility that comes with that shortcut. I'd add that, yes.
Right.
So sure, there are shortcuts. And then suddenly, a huge mantle of responsibility, which might have seemed fun before you got it, but there it is.
Right. Yeah. I think it was on quotes. I can't remember them. I can't say it, but there's some very just lining up with what you just said there about the importance and how you. I can't go there. So last question. There's one thing you say. You say, how good can it get? What does that mean, and why is that an important question?
It's the key to everything, because it harnesses the field of possibility, which we engage with or without our knowledge. So it brings it into our sphere of awareness that we're thinking about possibility.
So people should tell themselves, how good can I get? Is that the gist? You should ask yourself. Your life. So I should ask myself, how could this get? This experience that I'm having, or.
Yes. Because I believe that when each of us sort of elevates our field of consciousness and our experience of feeling enthusiastic, engaged, commitment with life, just feeling this whole sense of involvement and inspiration, the whole planet is a better place. So it's better for all of us to be able to experience this. Mm-hmm. And it's just a simple question. When you ask a question, you're always talking with the universe anyway, whether you know it or not. But right. By keeping that focus of question and by really meaning it with all your heart and just feeling like, just blow my socks off, show me how good it can get, bring it on. Okay. I want to experience this. When you feel it like that, you will experience it. Right. And that can give you some personal proof. And then try some days when you don't do that. Try it for yourself. See what you notice about the difference. But the recommendation is, this is a powerful mantra and it improves every situation. Even the ones where you think like, oh man, this is bad. There's no way out of this one. Well, then you can remember, wait, there's something I can say. It sounds stupid now, but how good can it get? Even if you're like that, say it anyway. Right. And you'll be surprised. You'll be amazed.
Okay. So that's maybe the silver bullet for today. How good can it get? Yes. Start saying it. I think they also have to actually believe it. Just saying it, you kind of have to embody it.
Just keep an open mind.
Right.
Keep an open mind. Just like, show me, how good can it get? I can't see it.
Right. Let it show itself to you. And then once you've seen it, you can start to believe it. And then I think then you're on a roll, probably. Yeah. So, so that's, thank you so much, Cynthia. That's wonderful. So the last, basically thing. So people, how can they find out more about you? How can they read your books? Do you have Twitter, your website? What's the best way to follow you?
Best way to reach all of that is through my website, realityshifters.com. And I am on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I've got a podcast. I've got books on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. But you can quickly just sign up for my newsletter. That's probably the best thing of all. And then even if you forget about this, you just get one email each month and get some reminders of those links and what's going on.
Oh, that's cool. And I also want to mention that I read your book using Audible, and you actually read the book yourself, which was really great. I think that's wonderful. Some authors don't do that, but I really enjoyed your book, Quantum Jumps, and I look forward to starting on the other ones as well. We didn't even talk about your books. I guess we talked about the topics that are in your books. Some of them,
Some of them.
And I'm a beginner, so it's just I have my novice, my rookie questions. But maybe we can do this again. I would love to talk to you again because we're just scratching the surface of this.
There's so much more. That'd be a pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. It's been a great opportunity to talk about my favorite subjects. So, and I love your enthusiasm.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cynthia. So peace, love, understanding, appreciation, joy, happiness, and ask yourself, how good can it get? And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.